Marcus Williams came back to life, inside a silence so heavy it felt buried under concrete. He couldn't move, couldn't open his eyes, couldn't speak. But he could hear, and the first thing he heard was his wife, softly laughing beside his hospital bed. Not crying, not praying, not begging God to spare him. Laughing. Then came the whisper that split his life clean in two. 3 more days, Vanessa breathed near his ear, her perfume floating over him like poison wrapped in flowers. 3 more days and you're legally gone, and everything you built becomes mine. Marcus felt those words like a blade sliding between his ribs. If he'd been awake, fully awake, he might have shouted, might have grabbed her wrist, might have demanded she say it again while looking him in the eye. But his body lay trapped beneath sedation, broken bones, swelling, tubes, machines, and the cold mechanical rhythm of the ICU. Inside, though, his mind was razor sharp. Every word landed, every breath she took, every smug little pause, every ounce of satisfaction in her voice. She thought he was already halfway dead. She had no idea she'd just spoken to the one man who had built an entire life by surviving disasters everyone else thought would finish him. Marcus Williams had never been handed anything. At 19, after his father died from a sudden heart attack, Marcus became the roof over his family's head before he was old enough to understand the weight of that responsibility. He put his own dreams on hold, stepped onto construction sites before sunrise, and learned fast that steel didn't care if you were tired, grief didn't stop bills from coming, and weak men made expensive mistakes. He worked, he learned, he saved. He took risks nobody else thought he could carry. And brick by brick, contract by contract, job by job, he built Williams Construction into one of the most respected firms in Charlotte. He wasn't flashy, never tried to be. He didn't need designer watches or loud speeches or people kissing up to him. His pride lived in foundations poured right, in buildings that stayed standing, in payroll met on time, in a company that fed families besides his own. The men on his sites respected him because he had done their jobs, bled their kind of blood, and never asked anybody to do work he wouldn't do himself. And for 5 years, he had believed Vanessa loved him for that. Not because he was rich, not because he was successful, not because she saw an easy mark in a quiet, hard-working man. He believed she saw the real him, the steady one, the loyal one, the man who still called his sister every Sunday, and still visited his father's grave on the anniversary of his death. Now, motionless in the dark, Marcus realized he had not married a wife. He had invited a predator into his home. Vanessa adjusted the blanket near his chest with fake tenderness. Her fingertips slid over the fabric, slow and careful, like she was rehearsing grief for an audience. "You made this so easy," she murmured. "Honestly, Marcus, sometimes I thought you might actually notice something. But no, you just kept trusting me, trusting everybody." Her voice shifted, warm with amusement. "I almost got tired of pretending. Almost." Every instinct in Marcus screamed at him to react, but years in construction had taught him the value of stillness when everything around you was unstable. Panic got people killed. Patience bought you options. So he listened. Vanessa stood, and he heard the soft click of her heels crossing the floor. A pause. The door opened. Her tone changed instantly, turning fragile and wounded for whoever might be nearby. "Yes, doctor, I'm hanging in there," she said, voice trembling with practiced heartbreak. "I just want my husband back." The door closed again. The mask dropped. A few seconds later, he heard the faint rustle of her phone. "Hey, baby," she whispered. Marcus felt his pulse slam against the inside of his skull. There was only one reason a woman standing beside her husband's coma bed would use that voice. "I know. I'm alone." "No, he's not waking up. The doctors are still talking about swelling and observation. Just stay calm. Everything is lined up. Insurance, business, all of it. By next week, this whole nightmare will be over." She laughed again, low, intimate. "No, he never suspected us. Marcus never suspected anything. That laugh stayed burning in Marcus long after she left the room. So did the word, us. If this story already has you locked in, go ahead and show some love to the channel with a like and subscribe. Because what Marcus was about to uncover was darker than he ever imagined. And the ending is one you do not want to miss. The next morning, Marcus let the doctors think he was still deeply sedated, while he tested his body 1 inch at a time. A finger first. Nothing. Then again. A twitch. It was tiny, barely there, but to Marcus, that movement was a poured foundation. Proof that he was still in the fight. Outside the fog of medication, memory began piecing itself back together. He saw steel beams against a pale spring sky. The 23rd floor of his newest project downtown. The smell of welding and dust. His business partner, Derek Thompson, stepping out of the service elevator, with that easy grin Marcus had trusted for 8 years. Derek had become more than a partner. He was family in all the ways that mattered. The kind of man Marcus had defended in rooms where no defense was needed. The kind of man he'd vouched for with money, contracts, and loyalty. They'd built the company side by side. Or at least, Marcus had believed they had. He remembered the safety walk. Remembered spotting something off about the scaffold alignment. Remembered stepping closer. Then the vibration under his boots. The metallic scream. The sickening give of bolts shearing loose. A glimpse of frayed safety cables. Derek shouting his name. And then 23 stories of open air. That part returned in flashes after that. Sirens, blood in his mouth. Vanessa leaning over him while paramedics worked. Her face perfect, frightened, beautiful. A wife in distress. Now Marcus understood that if she cried at all, it was probably because she thought he might survive. By afternoon, Marcus had recovered enough awareness to track voices clearly when people came in and out of his room. His younger brother Jerome came by first, restless energy packed into every movement, trying and failing to hide fear behind jokes. Then his sister Shanice, sharp as glass, already asking the doctors questions with the same precision she used in courtrooms. Marcus loved both of them fiercely. After their father died, he had raised them as much as he had loved them. Every scraped paycheck, every sleepless year, every sacrifice had been worth it to see them become who they were. He needed them now. More than that, he needed them to understand the truth without Vanessa understanding that they understood. Late that afternoon, while Vanessa stepped out to take a call, Shanice leaned over him and took his hand. Marcus pushed everything he had left into 2 fingers. A weak squeeze. Shanice froze. For 1 heartbeat, she said nothing. But Marcus knew that silence. It was calculation, not confusion. Then she bent closer, her voice calm enough for anyone outside the room. "You keep resting, Marcus. I'll be back." He forced his eyelids to flutter, just once. Her thumb pressed into his palm in return. She understood. That night, Marcus lay awake inside a body that still felt half-drowned, piecing together the shape of the trap around him. Vanessa wanted him declared brain-dead or incompetent. There had to be money involved. Probably more than one stream. Insurance for sure. Maybe control of his company. Maybe both. The man on the phone had to be someone close, someone positioned to benefit. He already knew the answer before he admitted it to himself. Derek. The following morning confirmed everything. Vanessa stood near his bed speaking to a doctor in a carefully shaken voice. "I'm just trying to prepare myself," she said. "If he doesn't improve, I need to understand what decisions may have to be made." The doctor sounded firm. "Mrs. Williams, your husband is stable. There is brain activity. We are not having that conversation right now." Vanessa murmured something grateful and stepped away. A few moments later, she moved to the far side of the room and made another call. This time, Marcus listened with the focus of a man clinging to the last rope over a cliff. "No, they're being annoyingly optimistic," she whispered. I know, but the company can't hold much longer if things keep dragging out." Pause. Marcus could hear the faint answer through the phone speaker. Not the exact words, just enough of the voice. Derek. His stomach turned to stone. "The fake vendors are holding," Vanessa said. "But if he wakes up too clear-headed, we have a problem." More faint sound from the other end. She lowered her voice even further. Then keep pressuring things from your side. If he's confused, maybe we can still push through temporary control. Medical, financial, everything. Marcus had been betrayed before in business. Broken promises, missed deadlines, cheap lies from men who cut corners and blamed the weather. But this was something else. This wasn't greed alone. It was intimacy weaponized. Friendship hollowed out. Years of shared meals and holiday dinners and handshakes revealed as part of a slow, smiling robbery. He lay there and did what he had done his entire adult life when disaster struck. He started planning. By the third day, he could move more. Not much, but enough. He stayed careful, let the nurses think progress was minimal, and saved his strength for moments that mattered. When Shanice came back alone, he pushed out a whisper so thin it barely sounded human. "Lawyer. Jerome. Trust no one." Her eyes sharpened instantly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't gasp. She simply nodded and began talking out loud about family matters for the benefit of anyone who might overhear. When Jerome arrived later, bouncing fake cheer into the room, Marcus used the same trick. A little eye contact, a deliberate blink, a whispered instruction when a machine alarm down the hall briefly masked his voice. Phone. Records. Derek. Jerome's face changed for half a second, then relaxed into a smile again. "Yeah, man," he said in a louder voice, as if they were discussing sports. "I'll handle it." That was all Marcus needed. A team. Evidence. Time. When he finally opened his eyes for real the next morning, Vanessa's reaction was almost worth the pain. She had been checking her phone beside the bed, probably texting Derek, when Marcus deliberately moved his hand. Her phone slipped from her fingers and slapped the floor. For one naked moment, before she could stop it, terror crossed her face. Not joy, not relief, terror. Then the performance snapped into place. "Oh my God!" she screamed. "Marcus! Baby, you're awake!" Nurses rushed in. Monitors beeped harder. Doctors followed. Questions came rapid fire. "Can you hear me? Do you know your name? Do you know where you are?" Marcus answered like a man climbing through mud. Slow, slurred, confused on purpose. He missed easy questions, mixed up shapes, pretended not to remember the current president. Let his gaze wander just enough to sell the story. Vanessa stood nearby, relief shining all over her face for the staff to admire, but Marcus saw the calculation behind her eyes. She thought brain damage might still save her. Good. Let her think that. Over the next several days, Marcus built his weakness like it was another kind of structure. He let his hands tremble, let his voice crack, let people repeat things to him. In front of the doctors, he looked foggy and unstable. In private, he listened. And what he heard was enough to damn them both. A young nurse, cheerful and unaware, mentioned the life insurance policy in front of Vanessa one afternoon. "$3 million is a substantial policy," she said. "Your husband must have really wanted to make sure you were protected." Vanessa gave a soft, grieving smile. After the nurse left, she muttered under her breath, too low for anyone but Marcus to hear. Protected had nothing to do with it. Marcus kept his expression blank, but his mind locked onto the number. 3 million. He had never approved that much coverage. That meant forged paperwork. That meant planning. That meant this had been in motion longer than he feared. Later that evening, when Marcus asked to speak to Vanessa alone, she sent the nurse out and took his hand. He waited until the door shut. Then he looked straight at her and spoke in his normal voice. "I heard everything." She didn't flinch much. That was the frightening part. Her fingers slid away from his. Her face emptied. "Prove it," she said quietly. No sweetness, no wife, just ice. Marcus held her gaze. "You and Derek, the insurance, the company, the countdown." A slow smile touched her mouth. "You're more awake than you look. You're done." "No," she said, standing up. "You're confused. Brain injury, medication, trauma. That's what every doctor in this building will believe. before they believe a construction man who can't count backward without stumbling. She leaned close enough for him to smell her perfume again. And if you recover too much, accidents happen. They already did once. Then she straightened, put the loving mask back on, and opened the door for the nurse with watery eyes. Marcus watched her go and knew two things for certain. First, Vanessa had done this before. Second, she believed he was still trapped enough to be controlled. That night, he texted Jerome from the phone Vanessa had stupidly left within reach. 3 words. She threatened me. Jerome answered almost instantly. Got it. The next morning, Shanice came in carrying a folder like she was bringing family photos. Inside was a recorder. She sat close, smiled gently for the hallway camera, and whispered, "Tell me everything from the moment you first heard her." Marcus did. Every word, every call, every threat, every suspicion. Shanice listened without interrupting, though her jaw tightened with every new detail. When he finished, she told him what she'd already uncovered. Vanessa had filed preliminary conservatorship paperwork claiming Marcus's cognitive instability made him incapable of handling medical and financial decisions. She had moved faster than grief should ever move. Too fast, like someone racing a clock. Jerome brought the second wave of truth. He arrived with a laptop and magazines, joking with the nurses on the way in. Once the door closed, he turned the screen toward Marcus. Fake vendor accounts, inflated invoices, payments to shell companies, money bleeding out of Williams Construction for years, carefully hidden among legitimate business costs. Marcus stared at the numbers in numb disbelief. Derek hadn't just been stealing. He had been weakening the company from the inside, building the illusion that Marcus's business was unstable and in need of rescue. Then Jerome opened another file. A news article. A picture. A familiar face with different hair, softer makeup, another name. Vanessa Richardson. A wealthy Atlanta developer named Kenneth Richardson had died in a boating accident years earlier. Shortly before his death, he had changed his will and increased his insurance. His new wife collected millions. His family suspected manipulation but couldn't prove it. Then Vanessa disappeared. Jerome kept digging. There were more men. Different states, different names. Same pattern. Older or self-made. Financially secure. Emotionally trustworthy. Then vulnerable. Then dead or nearly dead.
Marcus stared at the screen until his anger cooled into something harder than rage. Purpose. He was not Vanessa's first target. If he didn't stop her, he would not be the last. If you're feeling the way this story is tightening right now, take a second and like the video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind you just how dangerous a smiling face can be when the wrong person is wearing it. Marcus's recovery accelerated after that, but only in private. In front of Vanessa, he stayed damaged. In front of Derek, he stayed uncertain. When Derek visited the hospital carrying sympathy and concern like cheap props, Marcus nearly admired the audacity. "Brother, I've been holding things together at the office," Derek said, sitting by the bed with false loyalty written all over his face. "Everybody's rooting for you." Marcus let his eyes drift a little. "Office okay?" "Some bumps," Derek said with a sigh. "Nothing we can't handle. But depending on how long recovery takes, we may need some temporary paperwork, just to protect your interests." Protect. There was that word again. Everybody used it when they were trying to steal from you with both hands. Marcus blinked slowly, as if struggling to follow. Derek relaxed. He thought he was winning. Pat Henderson did not. Pat had been with the Williams family since Marcus was a boy. She had worked for Marcus's father, then stayed when grief and responsibility dropped like a mountain onto 19-year-old Marcus's back. She knew every contract, every supplier, every pattern in the company's financial pulse. When she visited Marcus with flowers from the crew, she waited until they were alone and then got straight to it. "I've been seeing things that didn't sit right," she said. "Now I know why." Over the next week, Pat tore through the company books like a storm with reading glasses. She found forged signatures, padded invoices, phantom labor charges, and emails subtly undermining Marcus's reputation in the industry.
Derek had been laying groundwork to paint Marcus as distracted and unstable long before the scaffold collapse. The plan was elegant in a rotten way. Make the company look like it was slipping, make Marcus appear compromised, let Vanessa gain control of his assets, then let Derek step in as the hero who saved the business after Marcus was gone. Jerome added software surveillance to the evidence pile. Shanice added legal strategy. Pat added hard financial proof. Marcus added patience. He didn't want revenge built on emotion. He wanted demolition done right. So he waited while Vanessa and Derek got bolder. Jerome's recordings captured hallway conversations outside Marcus's hospital room. "He still hasn't signed," Vanessa hissed one evening. "Maybe push harder," Derek said. "And if he refuses?" A pause. Then Vanessa answered with chilling calm. "Then we help him along. Brain injury patients have accidents all the time." That recording changed the temperature of everything. This was no longer just fraud and manipulation. This was attempted murder and conspiracy. By the end of Marcus's second week in the hospital, the case against them had teeth. Security footage showed Vanessa's mask dropping when she thought nobody was watching. Cloud data revealed deleted searches about medication interactions, undetectable poisons, and staged accidents. Financial records showed years of theft. Archived public records connected Vanessa to past victims. And still Marcus played weak. He let them believe they were close enough to taste victory. 3 weeks after the fall, Derek and Vanessa made their move. They came into Marcus's room together carrying a thick envelope. Vanessa sat on the bed beside him, hand resting on his leg with that fake softness. Derek spread documents across the rolling table and leaned in like an old friend trying to help. "Temporary power of attorney," Derek said. "Medical and financial, just while you recover. Vanessa can make decisions at home, and I can keep business operations stable." Marcus let his hand tremble over the papers. "There's a lot here." "No pressure, baby," Vanessa cooed. "We just want to make sure you're safe." Marcus looked from one to the other, then let confusion cloud his face. "Maybe tomorrow." Both of them hid their frustration badly. Good. Pressure created cracks. As soon as they left, Marcus signaled Jerome. Recovered texts appeared on the laptop within hours. Messages between Vanessa and Derek discussing whether Marcus needed another accident if he kept resisting. Vanessa's messages were clinical, efficient, almost bored by the possibility of murder. Derek sounded nervous in the texts, but not unwilling. That part mattered. When Dr. Chen finally cleared Marcus for discharge with outpatient therapy, Vanessa nearly glowed with satisfaction. She started talking about making the house comfortable, setting schedules, controlling medication, arranging care. Derek promised to stop by often and handle office concerns. Marcus smiled weakly and thanked them both. Inside, he was counting steps. That night, his real team assembled in the hospital room. Shanice with legal documents, Jerome with digital evidence, Pat with records and witness notes. 2 detectives looped in quietly through Shanice's channels, ready to act when enough cause turned into a clean arrest. Marcus listened to everyone, then laid out the final plan. He would go home. He would let Vanessa believe she finally had him where she wanted him. And when she made her next move, the whole structure would come crashing down on top of her. The Williams home felt different the moment he crossed the threshold. It was the same 2-story craftsman house he had once been proud to call his peace after long days on site. Same family photos, same polished floors, same kitchen island where he and Vanessa used to drink coffee in the mornings, same couch where they had watched movies and laughed and made future plans. But now Marcus saw it for what it had become. A stage, a hunting ground. Vanessa had subtly rearranged things. She moved his favorite chair away from the front window, shifted side tables, positioned house phones and chargers closer to where she spent most of her time. She had redesigned the room for control. Marcus let her wheel him into the downstairs guest room and fuss over blankets. For the next 2 days, he ate what he pretended to eat, swallowed what he pretended to swallow, and kept every appearance of weakness alive. Any pill Vanessa brought him ended up hidden, palmed, or discarded later. Jerome's research had already warned them what common medication combinations could do to someone with Marcus's injuries if the doses were accidentally manipulated. Derek visited often. Too often. Each time he asked casual questions about the business. Each time Vanessa circled close, steering the conversation towards signatures, approvals, authority. Each time Marcus looked tired, confused, fogged out. Their texts, monitored by Jerome, grew more impatient. He's stalling. Maybe tonight. Adjust his meds. We need this done. On the second evening home, Marcus overheard Vanessa in the kitchen. He's still resisting, she whispered into the phone. Maybe I need to help him think more clearly. Threat wrapped in polite wording. Classic Vanessa. The next morning, Marcus made his move. Over breakfast, with his voice thin and weary, he said, "Maybe we should do the business meeting today. Get everything sorted." Vanessa's face lit up so fast she couldn't hide it. Really? Marcus gave a weak nod. Yeah, let's finish it. By noon, the players began to arrive. Shanice came first, dressed like a calm professional relative. Jerome came next with his laptop. Pat followed, carrying files and flowers. Derek showed up almost vibrating with greed.
Vanessa floated around the dining room playing hostess, pouring coffee, moving chairs, smiling like a woman standing inches away from a fortune. Then the doorbell rang one final time. Vanessa opened it and found two detectives on the porch. For half a second, she forgot to breathe. "We're here to take Mr. Williams' statement regarding the construction accident," one detective said. "New evidence suggests deliberate equipment tampering." Vanessa recovered quickly. "Oh, of course," she said. "We were just about to start a family business discussion." "Perfect timing," Marcus called from the dining room. His voice was stronger now. Not fully strong. Just enough to make Derek glance up. Just enough to make Vanessa's smile tighten. Everyone took a seat around the long dining table. Marcus sat at the head. The detectives opened notebooks. Shanice placed her phone where it could record cleanly. Jerome opened the laptop. Pat laid out file folders with the kind of neat precision only truly dangerous, organized people possess. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Marcus looked at Derek. "Before we discuss temporary control of anything, let's talk about Mountain Ridge Supply." Derek blinked. "What?" Marcus slid papers across the table. "Interesting company. Premium rates. Large volume. Incorporated 3 years ago. Would you like to explain why its listed business address is a storage unit under your name?" Silence. Then Marcus laid down more documents. "And why hundreds of thousands in company payments to Mountain Ridge were routed into your personal accounts." Derek's face drained. Vanessa jumped in immediately. "Marcus, maybe this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Marcus said, and the weakness disappeared from his voice. Not all at once, just enough. Enough for everyone at the table to hear it. Enough for Vanessa to understand the room had shifted. Pat opened another folder. "Here are the related shell companies," she said calmly. "Peterson Contracting, Summit Materials, Carolina Industrial Freight. All fake. All tied to Derek. All used to drain Williams' construction over multiple years." Derek tried to stand. One detective stepped toward him. "Sit down." Derek sat. Marcus nodded to Jerome. The laptop screen turned toward the table. Security footage played, grainy at first, then clear enough. Derek and Vanessa together after hours in the office, kissing, talking, laughing. One clip after another, backup audio captured pieces of their conversations. Enough to show intimacy. Enough to show planning. Vanessa's mask cracked. "This proves nothing," she snapped. Jerome hid another file. Text messages appeared. Then audio recordings. Vanessa in the hospital hallway saying Marcus could be helped along. Derek asking what if Marcus refused to sign. Vanessa answering with cold certainty. The room went dead still. Even Derek looked horrified hearing it played back out loud. Then survival instinct kicked in, and he turned on Vanessa instantly. "She made me do it," he blurted. "This whole thing was her idea." Vanessa whipped toward him with pure hatred in her eyes. Coward. The detective nearest Derek moved in and pulled out handcuffs. "Derek Thompson, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and related financial crimes. Stand up." Derek stood on shaking legs.
Vanessa tried one last pivot, turning to Marcus with wide, wounded eyes.
Marcus, baby, I didn't know how deep this went. He manipulated me too. You know me. You know I love you.
Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then opened a second folder. Let's talk about the life insurance policy. Color slipped from her face. The signature isn't mine, Marcus said. Forensic analysis agrees. Shanice slid a report toward the detectives. Marcus continued. Then maybe we should talk about Atlanta, about Kenneth Richardson, about the boating accident, about the millions you collected under a different last name. The detectives stopped writing for a second and looked up. Vanessa's breathing changed. Jerome brought up public records, archived articles, facial comparison charts, financial timelines, cross-state identity changes. Pat added a final layer: motive, opportunity, and clear economic benefit tied directly to Marcus's near death. Shanice's voice stayed cool and deadly. We have identified a repeated pattern involving wealthy or self-made men, rapid marital integration, financial document changes, suspicious accidents, and attempted consolidation of assets. This is not an isolated event. Vanessa's composure shattered. No more soft wife. No more polished elegance. Something raw and ugly came through. You stupid blue-collar idiot, she hissed at Marcus. You think you're smarter than me? Marcus leaned back slowly and looked at her with the calm of a man who had already won. That's where you messed up, he said. You thought working with my hands meant I wasn't using my head. You thought loving you meant I was weak. You looked at everything I built and somehow still decided I was the easiest person in the room to break. He glanced at the detectives. Turns out, I just needed time. Vanessa bolted. Not far. Pat was already in her path near the kitchen doorway, solid and unmovable as a load-bearing wall. One detective caught Vanessa's arm. The other secured the cuffs while she thrashed and cursed, her fake cultured voice gone completely. Vanessa Cooper, also known as Vanessa Richardson and other pending aliases. You are under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit murder, and additional charges under investigation. As they led her toward the front door, Marcus spoke one last time. 3 days, he said quietly. She looked back. That's how long you said until everything I built became yours. Her eyes burned with hatred. Marcus held her gaze. Turns out 3 days was all I needed to start tearing your whole life down. If you've made it this far, show the channel some love one more time with a like and subscribe, because stories like this don't just entertain. They remind you to pay attention to the people who clap the loudest while quietly waiting for your life to fall apart. 18 months later, Marcus stood at the edge of a construction site in West Charlotte, watching steel rise into a bright autumn sky. The new community center was taking shape exactly the way he'd imagined it. Clean lines, strong framing, honest work. His body carried scars from the fall, but therapy had turned recovery into discipline, and discipline into strength. He was leaner now, harder in some places, softer in a few others that mattered. He no longer mistook kindness for proof of character. He no longer confused being needed with being loved. Pat walked over with permit papers tucked under one arm. Inspectors signed off this morning, she said. Foundation's clean. We're good to move. Marcus nodded. Pat was now a formal partner in the company, and nobody had earned it more. Derek had pleaded guilty, lost his contractor's license, filed bankruptcy. Court-ordered restitution came in little bits from whatever small jobs he could still get. Marcus barely thought about him anymore. Every dollar paid back went directly into a fund created in Kenneth Richardson's name, helping families investigate suspicious financial manipulation and suspicious deaths involving vulnerable loved ones. Kenneth's children had become part of that mission. So had Shanice. So had Jerome. Vanessa was serving time and still trying to manipulate from a cell. Letters came sometimes. Apologies. Tears on paper. Claims of spiritual transformation. Hints she wanted support at future hearings. Marcus never opened them personally. Shanice filed every one. Evidence of ongoing predatory behavior, she called them. Jerome pulled up one afternoon in his usual rush, stepping out of the car with his phone already in hand. Another family reached out, he said. Older contractor, sudden marriage, will changed.
Now there's an accident that doesn't feel right. Marcus looked out over the rising skeleton of the community center. Set the meeting, he said. Let's help them. That had become the real rebuilding. Not just his body, not just his business, his purpose. The publicity from the case had brought attention Marcus never sought, but he learned to use it when it could protect someone else. Interviews about warning signs, talks about financial predators, advice for families who confused charm with trustworthiness. He spoke plainly, like he always had. Watch for isolation. Watch for sudden paperwork. Watch for urgency disguised as concern. Watch for people who want control faster than healing can happen. Most of all, watch the ones who underestimate you. Those are often the same people already planning what they'll do once they think you're too weak to stop them. A young crew member waved Marcus over to review a measurement near the west side framing. Marcus crossed the site with the easy confidence of a man back in his element. He checked the line, corrected a call, nodded once, and the crew adjusted immediately. This was what Vanessa never understood. Construction had never made him simple. It had made him precise. It had trained him to see weakness inside structures before collapse came. It had taught him that failure usually whispers before it screams. It had taught him patience, sequencing, and the difference between panic and action. And most importantly, it had taught him that if something rotten is hidden inside the frame, you don't decorate around it. You tear it out. The breeze shifted. Somewhere above him, steel knocked softly against steel as the crane operator made a careful placement. Marcus looked up and saw the shape of the finished building in his mind before the walls even existed. A place for job training, financial literacy workshops, family support resources, rooms full of second chances and first warnings. Something real, something useful, something built right. Pat joined him again and handed over a reporter's card. She wants a follow-up interview, Pat said. Says your last one helped 2 people realize they were being manipulated. Marcus turned the card in his fingers, then slipped it into his pocket. Set it up next week. Pat smiled faintly. Thought you'd say that. He watched the crew keep working, all rhythm and trust and practiced strength, and for the first time in a long time, the memory of that hospital whisper no longer felt like the worst moment of his life. It felt like the moment everything hidden had finally been forced into the light. Vanessa had believed a coma made him powerless. Derek had believed friendship made him blind. Both of them had mistaken silence for surrender. They forgot that some men don't need to shout to become dangerous. Some men just listen. Then they build. Then they wait. And when the time is right, they bring the whole crooked thing crashing down. Marcus turned back toward the site office as the late afternoon sun spilled gold over the beams. Behind him, the skeleton of the community center kept rising, piece by piece, stronger with every connection locked into place. That was the thing about foundations. If they're honest, you can rebuild almost anything on top of them. And Marcus Williams, the man his enemies thought was too ordinary to outthink them, had learned the hardest lesson of all. Betrayal can destroy the life you thought you were living, but it can also reveal the life you were always meant to build instead. So he kept building. For his family. For the men who trusted his name. For the victims who never got the warning in time. For the families still trying to prove that love had been used against them. And for himself. Not the man who once believed every soft smile. The man who survived the fall, heard the truth in the dark, and came back with enough patience to bury the people who tried to bury him first.